Oh shit, I gotta go to this one. I forgot. Takes a little bit. There it is. Oh, no. Takes a little. Oh god, my fucking phone. Okay. And then I do like to do this. All right. Sorry. Now I'll get going here in a second. And I'll have to tell my friend this when I start the recording. All right. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Big E Comedy Venture Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eric Fady. I'm a podcaster and Michigan area stand-up comic. I'll be taking 2022 to travel around America with the goal of really exploring the country while also trying to perform stand-up comedy in at least once in all 50 states. This podcast will be a weekly show where I share my experiences from being on the road throughout this crazy adventure. But because I can be someone who tends to ramble a bit and could help someone rein in my storytelling once in a while, I've asked my good friend Amy to be my virtual co-host / sidekick on this wild ride. Hello, Amy.
Hello, how are you?
Or White Oprah, as you've been known to be called on other podcasts, I should say.
Yes, he said that he was going to charge you like a booking fee every time you use that name for me.
Really?
So, yeah.
Well, it's worth it. I've already got two news Twitter followers since, so it'll be worth it whatever he's charging me. We're going to do 3 of these episodes. I'm not obviously on the road yet. If you're watching on Facebook Live, we're going to be doing 3 of these episodes. Pre-road episodes where I wanted to set up some of the scene here of how this all came to be, what went into doing it, and just kind of stuff like that. I did want to intro for people who don't know my like I said, I think virtual co-host is the way to say it, because you're not. I felt like if I put co-host, people might think like, is Amy going with Eric on the trip?
Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
Not too many. I think it'd be a good reality show, but I don't know if
it'd be great. I have a life, so
I wonder who would survive long. Like you would. Who would want to kill each other first?
The difference between me and you is I would, at a bare minimum, require a Marriott of some sort in every state that we're staying.
Right. Well, luckily I do have my Bonvoy card, so I mean,
there you go.
I've got some of that covered. I'll be at Bonvoy's and Wyndham's, so it's really like I'm sure I don't know if you're familiar, but that's like Marriott is nice.
Yeah.
Wyndham's are like your Days Inns, your La Quintas.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're
fine.
It depends on what city you're in. Like when I travel to the UP for work, it's always really hard. There's like nary Marriott in the UP.
You stay at the Super 8 in Houghton?
No, I stay at the Holiday Inn Express. It's like brand new.
Oh, that's like out of downtown. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I stay.
No, I get it. I mean, obviously, we're as we get into this experience, we'll find out more. But I mean, I just can't. I mean, I worked as hard as I can, but I don't have every night Marriott money. There's going to be some camping involved where you might have. I don't know where you would have done with that. But anyway, we'll kind of get into that more as it comes along. But Amy's my co-host. We've known each other for a long time. It started off with me watching her dogs. Which right from the bat.
Without a dog sitter for a year. How did this work out?
I know. Well, there's a few people that I watch animals for that are kind of upset. There's Rory that I watch with at the Kennedys. I won't be there for a while, and I've got a few dogs I work with right now too. So, yep. Anyway, so I've met her through dog sitting and also up for a podcast that I worked on called the Detroit Cast. And through her dogs, we just became pretty good friends. And I wanted to have somebody on this show. I joke about me rambling or my storytelling ability. I think I can do it on stage mostly okay. But in a situation like this where I'm trying to like convey things and get information out, I felt like I needed someone to kind of facilitate the conversation.
Reined in.
Reined in is the word I've used a few times but I think it's the most apt, if you will. With that, this episode is going to mainly involve, I've called it the origin story. And I told you, I guess I thought we're going to have you kind of maybe interview me. So I'm going to start, and then why don't you just jump in if you feel like you want to stop me or clarify something. But it kind of, I'll be honest, like even though it has stand-up comedy right now as like the anchor, stand-up comedy is like the anchor of the trip. You know what I'm saying? Like it's to me like not the gimmick, but it's the thing that like gives it a purpose. But in reality, since I was a kid, we used to go on these long trips. And I just have always loved the road. And I used to think as a kid how cool it would be to just get in the fucking car and not have to be back in 5 days or even a week. You know what I mean? Like just really fucking get out there.
Well, what's interesting about you is you are the complete opposite of most human beings. Most humans hate being in the car. They hate going, everyone would rather fly. Right. It's a lot quicker. You're the complete opposite. You'd rather drive. So being in the car doesn't bother you.
Yeah. And I really do think that comes from, again, if I had had a family that had trips where we flew to Florida or we flew to, DC, but then walked around, I probably that would have been my normal. But like my normal now, I guess some kids, of course, rebel against that. Like maybe they do it and they're like, oh, I drove all around as a kid. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm flying. But for me, I fell in love with it. Like when we would drive down to Florida or drive out to DC, that's 12 hours.
Music on and,
well, back then I didn't even have an iPhone or anything like that.
But now.
Yeah, now for sure. For sure. You can just put on, obviously, podcasts and whatnot to your phone and stuff.
Do you listen to music or do you listen to podcasts while you're driving?
I tend to listen to more music. Actually, you know what I really like to do when I drive? And I'm wondering if my friends will be into this. This is going to sound so old man, but like when I get out of the state, I like listening to like local radio because I like hearing like I love it when you're in these areas, especially small town America, and you have like commercials for John's feed store, and it's very clearly John doing the commercial, and he's like, "Come on down, we're friendly and stuff." Right. I like getting the local taste. I wonder for how long that will be a thing, but I'll listen to AM radio. I'll literally just scan local AM radio even.
You'll have to let us know. Maybe each week you can do it. We can do a little segment on, what's the most interesting, like local goofy thing you heard on local radio? Like, was it an ad or was it like some contest that they had going? Like because those small towns do the dumbest shit.
Oh, I know. And for a radio nerd like myself, though, I think I don't know if I appreciate it more as a radio nerd or as a travel nerd, honestly, because as a radio nerd, I like it too, because I think of the fact that local radio is still, especially AM usually, like when you can tell the commercials, they're not done by some, paid satellite dude. They're just done by the owner or the wife or some shit. So I almost don't know if I appreciate them as much on a, like I said, a radio nerd or just a traveler who likes to experience small town life.
Well, and one thing people may or may not know about you is you really love gas stations.
Yes.
Which I will be doing to gas stations.
I love them. I love new gas stations. It's when I go on a trip. So I will actually be doing a week a YouTube show. I'll do like 1 or 2 a week, maybe, depending. But I'll be going to do a little YouTube show where I explore my favorite gas stations of the week, local gas stations of the week. So that's something people can also look forward to if they enjoy any of this. They may enjoy me on YouTube talking about gas stations. So
that will be something.
So there's that. And so I guess so anyway, the point is, like, as a kid, I just always had a love for travel anyway. Like and the travel version of like going to truck stops and going to gas stations. I enjoy flying still. Like I certainly do. Actually, I don't. I really don't like flying in the sense of it's boring to me. You just sit there. I hate sitting there. I hate not being able to see things. I do it because you have to. Yeah, I do it because you have to. And I know it's faster, but I don't love it. And so I used to just love being on the road. And then, fast forward at some point, I got into stand-up comedy. And I've had this idea of traveling around the country doing comedy. And I know it is... some people have gotten at me, by the way. Last year, when I first announced this, instantly I knew this would happen because last year, Tom Green, I don't know if you saw this, but Tom Green really embraced like a van life situation where he bought a big van and was driving around. The minute I told people I was going to start doing this, they're like, Tom Green's already done it. I'm like, well, for one,
Tom Green doesn't have to save up money to do something, and he can just
right. He just paid for someone. Oh yeah, he got a really nice van that he paid for that got outfitted out with like with like freaking like solar panels on it, so he could have a full professional studio in the back and stuff. And it's like, for one, I'm doing a little different than Tom Green, And two, I do things for the experience. So just because Tom Green's done it, and by the way, he's not even close to doing the same thing I did. He just went out of a van and started during COVID and kind of just like would park it in the desert and stay there for a few nights. So he didn't even do what I'm doing.
For you and say for this that I know you've been talking about this for quite some time. It's been probably going on 2 years now. I mean, you've been able to save for an entire year, work and save.
Yeah.
And so it's been, prior to that.
Well, I've had it in my head for about 5 years, actually, that it was something I was going to do at some point, but I never knew when or how I would go about it. And obviously I was doing the Detroit cast then, which was great. But I always knew that things, nothing lasts forever. And also personally on my end, some people don't like hearing this, I guess, but I'd accomplished what I needed to accomplish by being on the Detroit cast and having it be successful and making money and doing things. So at some point I knew I would want to move on and just do something different and fun. It's nothing against that, but it's like I'll tell you,
if anybody tries to hate on you, they are nothing but jealous, because every single person would love to have the opportunity to travel across the country for an entire year, but every single person has responsibilities or kids,
right,
and they can't do it. So your Peter Pan lifestyle is not for you.
Well, and when you mentioned that, I will say, and I don't want to get too into it exactly, but about how the money, but I did save up for it. It wasn't something like you said with Tom Green that just happened. I didn't have money in the bank. I'm not going to say how much I made on the Detroit cast, but it wasn't like I was sitting there making six figures. And I was like, you know what? I'll kind of just do this thing. Through the pandemic in the end, the podcast the Detroit cast had started. We weren't doing episodes, for people that listen to the Detroit cast, Mike was out on the West Coast and going through some health issues, and COVID had nothing to do with it really, but it kind of does seem like it was a part of it. But I started doing gig work essentially, and I started making some money, and that wasn't going anywhere. And I was like, holy shit, I've always had this idea of doing this. And when you mentioned not having those things, I don't have a wife or kids. I don't have anything technically holding me back. So that's when I finally just decided
on this trip. What if you fall in love in like fucking Alaska? Honestly, or like some random ass state that nobody goes to.
If I fall, I think I would imagine if I fell in love, because I'm not going to be in cities too many nights in a row. Like
somebody, and then
let's say I do,
him the whole trip, and
he's
on an episode.
Oh, well, that's like. Yeah. Well, if that happens, that happens. Nothing would stop me from finishing the trip.
Right.
I suppose that could happen.
It would just be crazy if after this whole thing, you were like, I'm off to Alaska. That's where I'm going to live from now on.
Yeah. No, you're right. Probably not that crazy, like you said, for most people that know me in a way, because I don't think anyone can ever expect really what I'm going to do next in that sense. I plan to come back to Michigan. That's certainly the plan. My mom's freaking out about that. My mom keeps asking me all the time, you're coming back to Michigan, right? You're coming back to Michigan, right?
She's going to miss you.
Yeah. And then my cat, I haven't, anyone that knows me too, my cat, Tony, oh my God. I love this cat I have, and he's old enough. He's just too old and has some health issues that I don't think it's feasible to take him. He goes camping and he likes trips, but I don't think it's feasible to take him on a trip like this. I don't think it'd be great for him in reality.
Worst case scenario, you get a call while you're on the road somewhere and you find out he's in poor health.
How dare you?
No, I know.
I
have to plan for all contingencies.
Right.
Do you pause the trip and come home?
I'll have to look into the case by case. I'll tell you this 100%. If it was like something came up,
Greater Midwest.
He's got cancer, he's got to go down, right? Because sometimes that stuff can happen fast. If they're like, hey man, last week, I will fly back 100%. If it's like, you know what, he's been we didn't want to say anything, but he's been doing kind of bad. We took him to the vet. Whatever. It's cancer. I don't know. Whatever. Yes, I will fly back. I will not allow him to be. Oh, I don't even want to talk about it. But I'd fly back for that. But
okay.
I don't fully know when you say like he takes bad health. Would I come back? That would all depend on where and when I was.
I just mean if that you know that he's going to be put down.
If I know he's going to put down, I will be back for that.
Okay.
I would not be on the road. I would not just sit in some hotel room in Nebraska going, oh, well, no, I would fly back for that for sure. Big tone. And so let me think. I had, it's funny. I had an outline here as I sent you. And as usual, I've just kind of gone in and out.
A little bit. We've covered what made you think about doing it.
Yeah. No, this episode, I was telling Amy that these first 3 episodes are not going to be nearly necessarily as long. They're just kind of, we needed to, even though we have a good friendship, I wanted to make sure we could sit here and get a little used to each other, kind of get people some level of like, hey, this thing's coming up, get to some of the backstory versus me just popping in Hawaii and going, hey, we're doing a podcast now.
So you are starting in Hawaii.
Correct. Which is your idea, which is your fault, technically, by the way. So
yes, I know. That was my suggestion.
And it's right. I think it's a good suggestion. It makes sense in every other aspect other than the fact that if I had not done that, I could have just started Jan 1 and drove right down to Florida and just started driving versus having to drive all the way to LA to fly to Hawaii to start it. Because in my mind, for people that again, if you don't know, my mind works like this. I can't just like start arbitrarily things. They have to have very specific why they would start somewhere. Why? So it has to be Jan 1 to December 31st. It cannot be December 27th until just kind of whenever or something. It has to be in this way. So the point is so because of your suggestion of starting in Hawaii, which I agree with in the end, we have to drive out to Hawaii to fly. So we're leaving, me and my 2 buddies, which I should need to mention at some point here too as well. I do this show, 2 Hippies, 1 Drunk, once a week with 2 other comic buddies that I met long ago in the Grand Rapids area. And they'll be coming along with me and we'll be doing our show weekly, our normal show weekly still, as well as a 2 Hippies, 1 Drunk on the road version once a week, where we'll be talking about, our ventures as well. How long
do they plan on staying with you?
They've got a good amount of money, so think
what are the odds that you have 2 other friends who are able to pick up and go with you?
I know. It's it was a very the stars aligning situation, because they're not people who are like me in a sense. Like, yes, they don't have kids per se, but they tend to be more not traditional, but it's shocking that they don't have a girlfriend or something, like things like that. It's not shocking. I don't have a girlfriend. And so what happened was we'd started doing my 2 Hippies show at January, beginning of this year, and they weren't going to come at that point. We were just going to do our show, and I was going to do it on the road. And I just started thinking more and more. I was like, guys, they weren't married. They're not married with kids either. But again, like I said, in the past, they've had relationships and whatnot. But I was like, guys, and we had talked about this in the past too. It wasn't something like just out of nowhere, but I was like, guys, why don't you, I'm serious. You should just come with me. And, now I will say this. I don't want to try to be like, ooh, but their deal is that I was already doing the trip. So I'm like, I'm already doing the trip. But so all you have to do is pay for your own food, and whatever else, like, if you want to go on a tour, I guess, or whatever you want to do. But like, I'm not asking them for gas money or lodging or anything, because in my mind, I was already doing that. Mm-hmm. So they had to save up a lot less money than I did. But that made sense, because I also live at home with no rent or, a lot of adult responsible bills that I have to pay. So
is Hawaii the only place you're flying?
Alaska we're flying to as well, because I've looked into it, and Alaska's from Seattle. Alaska's another like long drive. I mean, it could be, 15 hours or some shit like that, 15, 20 hours. Plus, plus here's the other thing. The West Coast is going to be interesting, because after my trips to Montana last year, I have discovered I do not like the mountain driving at all.
Boy.
So when we're in the West Coast, well, I've already told them, for one, luckily they lived in Colorado. They've been living in Colorado for a year now. So they're a little used to it. So maybe they can drive a little bit. But also I've already warned them that like, we might have days where we only get 200 miles in a day or something, or even less if I'm fucking freaking out. But so the point is like driving to Alaska, the time wasn't as much as the big deal of like, the road from Seattle all the way up to Alaska eventually would be rather treacherous, I imagine.
Oh, I gotcha.
And so we're going to fly into Anchorage and drive up to Fairbanks.
Nice.
When we do that. So, but yeah, we'll fly to there, but that should be it. Everything else should be in the car.
And which part of Hawaii are you going to? Honolulu?
Honolulu.
Okay.
Mainly because honestly though, you know what's funny? You could do the other islands cheaper and be a little more scenic, like in a way. Like Honolulu's kind of like, to me, like it's what I can tell is that.
Yeah, that's sorry. I think Honolulu. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just think Honolulu is probably the type of atmosphere you want for this kind of trip.
Well, and I'll tell you, the main factor was the idea of trying to do comedy because, like, comedy is not easy. Some of these states, when I'm looking into it, like, there's going to be places where it's like it's not just easy to do comedy. Alaska will be one of them. I haven't looked into it yet.
Right.
Hawaii, I've already discovered a place, and I got to message him.
People don't live in Alaska.
Well, but they have to have comedy. They must have an open mic. I'm going to Fairbanks. Fairbanks is a college town, which, by the way, us both being Michigan fans, to think back to when Fairbanks, this was radio for podcasting for very few, but Fairbanks, Alaska used to be in the CCHA. So like once a year, they would fly down to, Fairbanks, Alaska would fly down to Auburn, to, Ann Arbor and to to play hockey, but whatever.
You want some breaking Michigan news that I just saw come across my TV? Aiden Hutchinson is a Heisman finalist. He's been invited officially to the ceremony.
That's good. He's not going to win. And I don't think that he probably should win. But
I think it's cool he's invited.
It's very cool for a defensive player.
It would be cool if the two defensive players to ever win it both went to Michigan.
Yeah. I don't know. You know what? I should say this. I said he's not going to win. I didn't pay enough attention to know. I assume he won't win because he's a defensive player. But I don't really know what else is out there. But that's cool. No, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, Hawaii, I picked, I picked Honolulu mainly not even because of what you described, but mainly, well, maybe there's what you described, but I needed a place where I could guarantee or not even guarantee, but there'd be the best chance of doing an open mic somewhere.
Yeah,
and some of those other islands. There's a college there. And some of those other islands, the problem is you could fly there, but then once you island hop, now you got to pay another $45, to fly over, and then you got to fly there just for the day, or you got to fly. It just becomes a little more expensive. So how long are
you going to be in Hawaii for?
Hawaii will end up being 5 days. There'll be, we're going to fly in New Year's Day, as I told you again. So New Year's Day, and then we have an Airbnb. I don't want to say my one friends, I've been keeping it hidden from them. So I'm going to keep it hidden from people how the Airbnb is, because I've been keeping it hidden from my friends because I think it's a really cool thing and I kind of want it to be a surprise. But we got an Airbnb for 3 nights and then 2 nights in the main town, where I have found that Tuesday night it looks like there'll be some comedy. Hopefully,
nice.
I found a guy and he said he's still running a show, so I got to message him again this week and see. Hopefully he's still running it, but he said he could get me on as long as the show was still going. He said he could get me on.
So then you're going from Hawaii, you'll go to California.
Yep, a few days in LA, and then we'll head down the coast to San Diego. And I'm not going to go through the whole itinerary now, but I'm only doing it as what you're kind of, I assume, getting at, is to kind of just see kind of what the trajectory of the trip will be. Right. So yes, it will be LA a few days. Originally, by the way, this shows you how I'm a pretty good planner, believe it or not. People that don't know, that listen to the Detroitcast, know me as like kind of the retard, quote unquote, or whatever. But I'm actually usually pretty good at planning shit. But you can always just like slip things, And when I did this at the time, I was like, what's the cheapest way to fly to Hawaii? And what's the fastest way? Because we're trying to get it, in this mode of doing New Year's Eve. There wasn't like kind of, hey, we'll just plan a date and give ourselves a week or something. Mm-hmm. So point is, originally I had us coming out of San Francisco because I just thought that's the fastest path. Well, idiot. I didn't even think about the fact that that entails trying to cannonball run it to San Francisco, in the end of December. You know what I mean? So that means you're going through the up and over through the Rockies. I mean, you go through, I don't know if you've ever known people or done that kind of travel, but I know Chubbs, and my buddy Chubbs used to go out to Denver once in a while for skiing. And in that type of year, you could easily have a road just shut down.
Right.
Or just and that might not necessarily happen, but it can. Or you can all of a sudden you just have a night where there's a foot of snow and you're trying to drive over the Rockies. So we ended up changing. Luckily, I got a very
that's about to ensue on this trip. I can only
What's up?
imagine. I said the hijinks that's about to ensue on this trip because
I know
things are gonna happen like that, and then some crazy story is gonna come out of it.
I know, and I don't mind the hijinks. What I've told my friends is, I just want to get out to LA and not miss that flight, and then after that, whatever, anything goes. Then after that, dude, you know, if we're driving and we see something, and we originally were gonna go, you know, longer, and it's like, nope, let's stop here. That's fine. It's like, so I ended up changing it to LA because now to get out there, we're gonna go southern, you know, down further south and get out there. But to kind of answer your question, so we're gonna go to San Diego, after, you know, LA for a few days after Hawaii, San Diego, and then we're gonna do the lower half of the states, and we're gonna lower half, like, you know, New Mexico, Phoenix, Texas, yada yada. Nice. And I'll get into a lot of that later, but that's what a trajectory. It's going to go lower, then a little up to the middle, then up to Alaska, and yada yada. So
sweet.
That's that. I'm trying to think if I want to say, and for people, by the way, I want to say this for people listening. Some people don't. I also do, like I said, I do this other podcast on Wednesdays called Two Hippies, One Drunk, and these buddies are going to be coming with me on the trip. And we're gonna eventually, I'm gonna work this all out where I'm gonna try to get people to realize, like, that's where I'm gonna want to get people to follow us on social media. So like, we're gonna have a website up here soon, and basically like our Instagram and our YouTube and our TikTok that we're gonna have, it's all gonna be under this umbrella of Two Hippies, One Drunk. You know, and then because our thought process is we're trying to build a following, and it's like, it'd be better if we all just put it in one spot, try to get everyone there, versus us all individually trying to, like, oh, follow me on Instagram. You know what I mean? It's so for anyone watching right now, we do have our Instagram set up. We do have our YouTube and Facebook set up. And we're going to have a TikTok here soon. And we'll, but the number two hippies, number one drunk is where we're going to really want to direct people to go. And we're going to be doing a bunch of stupid, like when you mentioned hijinks, we've come up with a bunch of dumb little shit we want to do on the road. Right. You know, like I mentioned, my YouTube gas station channel or my YouTube gas station review and just shit like that. So anyway, I wanted to get that out there. This is hard for me. This is my first, I feel like this is the first podcast I've ever done really hosting a show in a lot of ways. We're not going to go too much longer here because we're going to keep these a little brief. Although, as I told you, if we go 15 minutes, that'll be enough. And here we are at 27, and I probably could keep rambling, I suppose.
You could.
Is there? Let me see what this says here. Make sure you consider. This person's just telling me to make sure I realize that things in Hawaii cost more. I know. You know what? Money wise, I'm just gonna do what it is. We can get into more of how I got my money. I just kind of said I was doing gig work, is what I'll describe it as, and I've been doing it literally almost 7 days a week, other than a few weekend trips with my parents or something.
Bank.
So I've been trying to make as much money as I can. I can only make so much money. We'll just have to see, and eventually we'll get into more. Hoping that maybe people will find this interesting enough to send us a few little dollars here and there to give us some gas.
Tip jar.
A virtual tip jar. I think what I'm going to ask at some point is on the honor system, they can do whatever they want. We're never going to charge anybody for anything. But if people start to actually find any of this interesting, I'm going to say, like, hey, man, if you could just give us $1 an episode on your honor, how many you watch, because we're going to have 3 a week technically. But I'd prefer maybe if you watch more than one, you don't have to give $1 every episode, but like $1 a week. What about that? You know what I mean? $1 a week is what I'm going to kind of just ask and something. And I don't want to like pressure anybody by any means. And we'll talk about this more later. I'll be through like my Venmo and all the money though. If we get to the point where we raise any level of money, we'll all just go towards gas and food. My only goal out of this trip is to come out not in debt. It's not would I love to make money? Of course, but it's not. But I'm not worried about making money. I just want to make gas and food. So I'm trying to think, is there anything kind of, as we wrap up like this first episode, I call it the origin story. And in the end, we still kind of bounce around a little bit, but that's okay. Is there anything you can think of that you want to throw out here?
This was a good first episode, E.
All right. You too. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. By the way, if I haven't said, I do appreciate you doing this with me. Sure. I really, well, and these will get a little more interesting as we go. We needed to start something before we went, but it will be eventually. These will include, I'm just gonna be in some shithole, in Nebraska.
And as somebody who listened to your previous podcast, the Detroit Cast, for many, many years, I can say that you have some of the funniest fucking stories I've ever heard. Like the
Right.
most random shit happens to you. And so that's why this podcast is going to be amazing, because it's not like if you were interviewing me, I'd be like, yeah, I got a Marriott and I ordered some room service and then that
Right,
was
right.
it. Like you
Oh,
are
no,
going to
I'll-
get into some high
I'll end up walking down some alley at fucking 2 in the
for
and
sure.
like, I'm not even gonna, like, I've already said, like, people that know me, I've backed off a little bit on my drinking. Like, I'm not even gonna be getting like my crazy wasted like I would have back in the past. But I don't need to be drunk to get in
Not
those
needed.
situations. That's just the reality of it. Like, I'll
well,
be someone.
exactly.
I'll just be someone who might wander down to the hotel lobby at 3 a.m. and just start talking to a prostitute or something. Like, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, we also need to have an over/under on how many times you lose your keys.
Well, that can't happen. That's gonna be not because I don't have a spare, but like these are, I got this. I have the keys for my minivan. Is one of those like keys that's kind of a pain. It's not like you can just go to the fucking thing and it's $50. So
I'm telling you,
you
need to give your spare to one of the responsible ones.
I will. I'm gonna give them a key, and I'm gonna tell them with the instructions of treat this as if you have the key to the car, as if there is no other key. Do not treat this as if like it's a spare. Treat this as if you're driving all the time and you need this key. Another thing, I'll say this as I'll say this as an ending for this, and then we'll end this one, and we'll be back here next Monday to talk a little more about some of the preparation and stuff. But since you got that going and with the stories, this is, I think, what I'll end. I was telling my buddy this. I hung out with the one hippie recently, Tyler, and I told him I hadn't said this yet to them, but look, we're all older. I'm not suggesting. Look, I'm not a ladies' man either, so I'm not suggesting we're just gonna be walking around banging broads. But but I've said, like, dude, I'm not a touring band. We don't have we don't have some backer for us. So like, we can't just lose shit. So like I've said, the rule is gonna be, I don't care if they on their end, for example, I don't care if they sleep with a new girl every effing night on the road. But nobody knows what hotel we're in, and nobody knows like, you go to their place and you get a ride back. They don't take you back.
I predict that this rule lasts maybe
the first time that
Hawaii. Maybe.
That's the
because
going
it's
in.
That start with you bringing someone back and you ignoring your own rule. That's where it's gonna start. It's just gonna fall off the wheel. I mean, it's just gonna be a shit show.
Well, going in, rule.
It's a nice goal to have. We admire.
Yes, going in, the rule is that has to be somewhere else. Nobody knows where. Like I said, like, even when we do comedy shows, I've just told people, like, on mine, I'm just gonna tell people, like, every town we go to, we're gonna have a standard place where it's like, oh, so where are you guys staying at? Super 8. Doesn't matter. That's where we're staying. Like, we're not staying anywhere. Don't worry about it.
Wait to see how long this lasts. Oh my god.
So there's a good spot to end. And
right.
so what's funny? I call this the origin story. We kind of didn't do it a little bit, but in the end, we kind of went around, which is fine. We're gonna do 2 more of these on the road, and then I'll take a week off, and then the first one on the venture, as it were. So that will do it for this episode 1 of the Biggie Comedy Venture podcast. Thank you, Amy, for joining me here. And although it's weird because you're not a guest, so I guess I'll be saying that to you every week because you're literally a co-host. But
I am.
I'm thanking the co-host for being here. But
yes. You're welcome.
All right, that's it, I guess. Okay, this will be on Spotify and iTunes and stuff like that. And like I said, for me on my end, please go to 2 Hippies 1 Drunk and follow us. Amy, do you want to throw out your stuff?
Follow me on Twitter, Awake Not Woke 17.
I love that Twitter handle. It's a great Twitter handle. All right, that's it. Bye, guys.
Bye.